Hi, this is J.P. Allen, the writer-director of Sex and Imagining. This script was inspired by a series of strange and anonymous late-night phone calls I received many years ago. The phone calls had a surprising outcome, and I'll tell you more about that in a few minutes. First, let me give you some background on this script and on this small, rough film. Probably because of its title and the topic, it's both the most popular and most hated of our films. Without any significant promotion, it has at times been a top seller in major Amazon movie categories, while also getting mostly negative reviews, perhaps because it's confused with pornography, which of course it isn't. However, the more negative the reviews the film got, the more it sold. Also, although we can't be sure of exact numbers, we believe it has been pirated thousands of times. The script was written in 1999 at approximately the same time as our first film, Coffee and Language. I intended Sex and Imagining both as a play and a screenplay. It was first fully produced on stage in New York City in 2001 on Valentine's Day, then later in Los Angeles and San Francisco. In 2007, we decided to produce an extremely small film, a kind of experiment that we called a chamber film. A simple production with limited locations that we filmed at extreme speed using handheld cameras. Our hope was that this style would embody the Chinese box labyrinth of the story. Sally Clausen and Chris Pfluger were the only actors ever seriously considered for these roles. I met Sally at an audition for the San Francisco stage production, and she gave the best audition I'd ever seen. This is Chris Pfluger's third role with CNL. We rehearsed the script at length and then shot almost the entire film in 4 days at a house at Lake Tahoe. Filming at night, the actors performed multiple long takes of about 40 minutes in length. Casey Smith and Miles Montalbano filmed these takes, Dan Gomez was on sound, Liz Ross produced, and everyone worked in a kind of complex ballet, since the actors, cameras, and microphones were all moving across the room. Most of these takes were uninterrupted. The story of Sex and Imagining was controversial from the first public reading of the script. The workshop audience both loved and hated it. Does the story concern a perverse relationship or a deeply loving one? Is the relationship ever resolved? Or is it an unending mind game? And this brings me back to that phone call of so many years ago. Late one night, I was awakened by the telephone ringing. A woman was on the line, but wouldn't tell me her name. Half asleep, I continued to talk to her as she told me the story of an erotic dream. Then she started asking me personal questions. At first, I was very annoyed and evasive, but I began to believe that I recognized her voice, so I kept talking to her. She told me a few things about herself, but when I tried to get information that might identify her, she hung up. The next night, again, very late, she called back. When I continued to try to find out more about her, she began playing a series of games with me, pretending to be different women and even altering her voice. After a few more calls and questions, I became absolutely convinced I knew who she was. But when I addressed her by that name and insisted that I knew who she was, she argued with me and then hung up and never called me again. Later, I met with the woman that I thought had made the calls, but when I asked her about it, she seemed to genuinely not know what I was talking about. So maybe I was wrong. I never, with certainty, learned the identity of the caller, but I remain convinced that I somehow knew her and that maybe we were even very close. That question of identity and love is at the center of this experimental chamber film. How fully do we know the people we love? How much of sexuality is a game or an illusion? And isn't there always a mystery at the heart of every deep relationship?